Ground Zero, near Kurchatov in East Kazakhstan. The first Soviet nuclear weapon test was carried out in this vast and featureless steppe just 100 miles from Semipalatinsk on August 29, 1949. Karapet Kuyakov was born without arms. He lived in this area, and his family witnessed the test of nuclear weapons without knowing about the terrible consequences for them and their children. My mother was climbing on the mountain, and she saw a mountain trembling and those explosions. People were told in advance that they should lay on the ground and leave their houses, covering themselves with something. And they went outside to watch it. It was very interesting for them, and they saw this for themselves. Every time, my mother started to cry, and she was afraid that a war had started. This was true, but it was a different war. The Cold War between the powers of the United States and the Soviet Union was a dangerous power struggle. Both sides possessed nuclear weapons, and this seemed to guarantee mutual destruction. The threat of nuclear warfare was evident. The region of East Kazakhstan remained an epicenter of the Cold War for the former Soviet Union, and 456 nuclear weapons were detonated at the testing site by 1989. The destructive power of the blasts left a dark legacy for the local people, including cancer and birth defects, which continue today. Zara Kuyakova remembers well the day when her brother Karapet was born. Everyone was in shock, and after that, we started to understand that this happens not only in our home, but many families had handicapped children as well. We were in shock, of course. My remembrance about my childhood is that I was living with handicapped children, like me. Three generations of people from the region of Semipalatinsk, now known as Semey, have suffered from illness caused by exposure to nuclear radiation. Many children died in their mother's womb. When Karapet Kuyakov was older, he was told that his mother had experienced the loss of 2 children before him. My mother told me about it. The first baby was a boy and lived to 8 months, and after that she had a girl. She lived only 6 months and died. The lives and health of approximately 1.5 million people were impacted by radioactive nuclear fallout. Extremely high rates of childhood leukemia have been reported. Most residents of Semey do not live past 60 years of age, and many children are born handicapped and severely deformed. Karapet Kuyakov remembers a shocking story about the method Soviet soldiers used to treat the victims. Friends of my father told me that they lived near the city of Kurchatov and that they were the subjects of experiments. They were brought up to the territory where they were tested regularly. Soldiers came equipped with gas masks and gave them a glass of vodka. It was believed that vodka would neutralize the radiation. That was wishful thinking. Today, the people of Kazakhstan know about the damages and consequences of nuclear weapons testing. The past is a history recorded under Soviet rule, a sad history. The Institute of Radiation Safety in Semey conducts radiochemical and spectrometric researches on the environmental samples. They measure the content of radionuclides in a human body in order to help the victims. Individual human irradiation doses have been recorded and registered here for many years. The first information about the hidden catastrophe reached the people of Kazakhstan in 1989. The citizens staged mass demonstrations against further testing throughout the Republic. Protests erupted as people became increasingly aware of the horrible consequences of nuclear weapons testing. But the Soviets ignored the public will and conducted what would be remembered to be the final nuclear test in October 1989. When Kazakhstan achieved independence in 1991, the Soviet government offered the country 5.1 billion rubles to allow 2 explosions. The Kazakh parliament rejected the proposal, and President Nursultan Nazarbayev ordered the nuclear test site in Semipalatinsk to be shut down on August 29, 1991. Kazakhstan fully rid the country of 1,400 nuclear warheads from its territory by 1995. We chose a different path and closed the nuclear test site, eliminated our nuclear arsenal, and we believe that we have done very well. A new state has to inspire confidence in the world community for its own development. Kanat Sarabayev, a nearly lifelong associate and advisor to the national leader of Kazakhstan, remembers the challenge faced by the president in his desire to close the infamous test site. I would like to add a few words. That it wasn't easy in 1989 after the last explosion for him, that he practically prohibited further tests at the nuclear site. Moreover, by these steps, he unified nationwide support in Kazakhstan, and since 1989, no more tests have been conducted. Today, President Nazarbayev is applauded by leaders around the world for his decision to close the test site and banish all nuclear weapons from Kazakhstan. The nuclear security summits in Washington in 2010 and in Seoul in 2012 were milestones towards the achievement of global nuclear safety. Kazakhstan's example has inspired world leaders, and the vision of nuclear safety across the globe is moving closer to becoming a reality. Just 5 months after the Seoul summit, representatives of parliaments and governments of 75 countries and more than 20 international organizations met for the conference From a Nuclear Test Ban to a Nuclear Weapons-Free World in Astana. It was scheduled for August 29th, the UN International Day Against Nuclear Testing. This day was designated because it marks the closing of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site, the world's second largest after Nevada. The conference started with a trip for delegates and international media to East Kazakhstan. They visited the Institute of Radiation Safety and learned about the results of scientific research and the Nuclear Technology Park, which utilizes innovative manufacturing techniques. A smaller group finally visited the center of the 80-mile-wide test site at Ground Zero. Visiting this area is a sobering experience. The landscape is flat, with dry scrub as far as the eye can see. The site has a ring of abandoned buildings. Cameras and recording equipment were attached to the watchtowers. The concrete bunkers look like shark fins in an atomic desert. They were designed to measure the intensity of nuclear radiation. There was an eerie silence in this experimental field until the former Australian Foreign Minister addressed the group with his emotional speech about this sad chapter of human history.
Not one of those weapons tested saving the world from nuclear catastrophe. Rather, every one of them bringing us ever closer to that. So long as any state has nuclear weapons, others will want them.
The group left Ground Zero and traveled by helicopter to Seme City. Overall, a cumulative power 2,500 times greater than the nuclear charges in Nagasaki and Hiroshima was exploded at the test site. On some grounds of the former test site, radioactive contamination will exist for millennia. Sometimes the area looks like a desolate, surreal moonscape, cratered and blasted by the explosions, which left gray images of devastation. The current residents of Seme warmly welcomed the 140 participants and delegates of the conference to their hometown to mark the 21st anniversary of the closure of the test site and the end of the nuclear era in Kazakhstan. It was a feast of joy and laughter with a positive outlook for a better future for the coming generations. A groundbreaking ceremony for the new Museum of Peace in honor of the victims of nuclear testing was held. Włodzimierz Cimoszewicz, the former Prime Minister of Poland, spoke to the delegates and the people of Seme. He was joined by politicians from Japan, Canada, Thailand, and Kazakhstan to promote global nuclear non-proliferation. This was also the theme of the following conference in Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan. 200 participants traveled to the political and administrative center in the middle of the Great Steppe. Since 1998, the city has swiftly grown into a vibrant new metropolis with world-class architectural wonders. President Nursultan Nazarbayev opened the conference, from a nuclear test ban to a nuclear weapons-free world in Astana, with his speech to international leaders, parliamentarians, representatives from the United Nations, disarmament experts, and key non-governmental organizations. He also introduced a new global project. Today, Kazakhstan launches the International Atom Project. Under this project, any person on this planet who opposes nuclear weapons can sign the online petition. This message needs to be received and to be put into action because the future is still unwritten and the danger is present. The participants were encouraged to multiply this urgent message. Many of them have joined the parliamentarians for nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament.
parliamentarians have been pushing this idea in parliaments, had parliamentary hearings, we've got resolutions adopted in a number of parliaments. We then presented those to Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General. He saw that there was enough support for this idea to come out with a 5-point plan, and that's one of the reasons we're here in Kazakhstan, to give more experience, information to parliamentarians to go back to their parliaments to move for ratification of the test ban.
We do need to convince the people of the world. Most people in the world have no idea what a nuclear weapon is, how many there are, and how threatened they are by them. So there's a tremendous need for public education on the subject.
The example of Kazakhstan is a clear message to the world. Political leaders like German Foreign Minister Guido Westerwelle met in Astana in an atmosphere of peace to discuss a way to build global security without nuclear weapons and to achieve global abolition of nuclear weapons in the future.
We have to join forces to put an end to nuclear explosions. We are for a nuclear weapons-free world. Germany will support this direction.
Some nations were hesitant to make such a bold statement, but they are willing to be a part of the solution in the coming years.
С удовлетворением можно констатировать, что
I am pleased to say that this theme about nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament is a very important part of international policy for most countries of the world. A world without the threat of weapons of mass destruction is a priority target for international security. The conference concluded with an appeal to parliaments and governments to stop any further nuclear weapons production and reduce the role of these weapons. The resolution was unanimously approved.
I think the declaration is strong because a lot of people had input into it and everyone was working to make it as good as possible. So it's going to be a very useful document as we go ahead with our work.
The declaration is very good and it provides for us who want to work for the nuclear weapon-free world really a fundamental sort of document.
I found it very satisfactory. Covered a lot of important subjects and I think will be a contribution going forward.
I share the values of nuclear disarmament and I hope that one day my country too will join. As you well know, it's not a simple issue.
I am hopeful. I think that the desire to keep nuclear weapons comes from fear. And the desire to abolish nuclear weapons comes from courage. And as I look around, I see there are examples of courage.
I thought it was a very comprehensive and very compelling document and reflected very good atmosphere of this conference, very constructive, very thoughtful, and also reflects a lot of appreciation of the role of Kazakhstan and the President and the initiative that he's taken. So I think all round a very successful event. Very good for Kazakhstan, very good for the world.
These declarations were also highly appreciated by Karapek Kuyakov, an honorary ambassador of the Atom Project. He experienced many nuclear tests as a child in East Kazakhstan. At the conference, journalists were standing in line to speak with Karapek about his touching story. The 44-year-old artist is an active supporter of the international anti-nuclear weapons movement. The motivation for his engagement is not his own physical challenge, but rather the suffering of others. Surely this project wants to open the eyes of the world to the consequences of these tests. I saw a lot of sick children who were born with abnormalities, and parents tried to hide them in their houses, not even letting them out, because they were ashamed. I want very much to help these children. Karapek Kuyakov has embraced life and become a renowned artist, painting using his legs and mouth. His life is a testimony that the damage caused by radioactive fallout is not limited to one generation, but passed down through generations. Today, the Atom Project tells stories of the survivors of nuclear weapons testing through the faces, bodies, and lives of the victims. Everybody can sign the petition at theatomproject.org to stop nuclear weapons tests. This message of concerned people from all over the world will be brought to the attention of governments and leaders of the world's nuclear powers who have not yet signed or ratified the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Worldwide participation is needed for an influential campaign that will help secure the future for coming generations. As an honorary ambassador of the Atom Project, Karapet Kuyakov travels the world to deliver his message. One of his trips brought him to Geneva in Switzerland, which is considered to be one of the world's most international cities. Geneva is located in the heart of Western Europe and is a worldwide center for international diplomacy. 26 international organizations have their headquarters at this crossroads for diplomatic and humanitarian affairs. Over 40% of the population are of foreign origin, and 45,000 international civil servants work in this multicultural city. The United Nations office in Geneva is the most important international cooperation center, together with the UN headquarters in New York. The Red Cross was founded by Henri Dunant in Geneva in 1863. Peter Maurer, president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, welcomed the director of the Nazarbayev Center to get more information about the Atom Project. Diplomats, UN officials, experts, and journalists were invited to a press conference at the Intercontinental Hotel, where the Atom Project was presented and explained. The delegation from Kazakhstan addressed the launch of the exhibition, A Lesson in Peace, Dismantling the Soviet Nuclear Weapons Program in Kazakhstan. The participants had an opportunity to ask questions and received clear answers.
That said, I think we're trailing far behind initiatives such as this from the get-go.
Karapet Kuyakov's message touched the participants deeply. Karapet was also invited to speak at the UN in Geneva and show his paintings in the exhibition hall at the UN Palais des Nations. The exhibition of his work is called I Have Only My Heart to Hold You. The honorary ambassador of the Atom Project has had a lifelong passion for art and started to paint with his mouth at a very young age. He is telling the story of the victims as a lesson for other countries to follow. In some of his pictures, he tries to express some of the pain that nuclear weapons have brought to mankind. With this picture, I tried to show the suffering and the pain, which our people in Kazakhstan endured, who lived near the Semipalatinsk test site for 40 years. I wanted to show this tragedy and, if possible, the braveness of the people to live there, though they became ill and died. This happened from generation to generation. Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, the Director General of the United Nations office at Geneva, addressed the visitors of the exhibitions. The former foreign minister of Kazakhstan is impressed with the Atom Project.
This project has a very positive feedback from the United Nations because it symbolizes a common interest of the United Nations as well as the government of Kazakhstan, the civil society of my home country to achieve peace all over the world. to make the current world safer and without nuclear weapons?
Well, I think a project like the Atom Project is actually quite timely. One of the things that we need to do is to reach out to a different generation, a new generation of people and young people, and convince them of the importance of disarmament and arms control for the peace and security of the world. And so this kind of project that's utilizing those new tools is actually quite exciting and has the possibility of bringing in a whole new group of people into this debate, which is great.
The Atom Project online petition can make a difference. When people of the world speak together for a united cause, political leaders are forced to react. The Atom Project can coalesce the support required to make real a dream that has eluded humankind for nearly 70 years. A world free of nuclear weapons.